While residents of the Gulf are watching the engineering response in the Gulf, watching the underground oil volcano and waiting for it to stop spewing oil so they'll know just how big a disaster they're really facing, the political response to the BP oil disaster inches along in Washington, D.C. The Washington Post reporting today that with Congress back from the 4th of July recess, Senate Democrats are looking to reconfigure an energy bill that, among other things, would require BP to assume full unlimited liability for damages in the Gulf of Mexico. The Washington Independent describes the new energy bill as being, quote, cobbled together from a number of existing proposals. And of course, as usual, all this legislative retooling and cobbling together will be aimed at coming up with not the best energy bill possible for the country, but the best energy bill that 2 or 3 Republicans will also vote for. And in that context, consider it instructive that the highest profile Republican campaign fund for the midterm elections was started with oil money. It's a group called American Crossroads. It's run by Karl Rove and by former Republican Party Chairman Ed Gillespie. Its publicly stated goal is to raise $52 million for Republican candidates this election year. After a few hiccups here and there, the group seems to be well on its way now and is already spending millions on ads. The group's seed money, its first $1 million check, came from the president of Chief Oil and Gas in Texas. How does an oil company think it's going to benefit from a big investment in Republican candidates for this year's elections? I don't know. The mind of an oil company executive is a depth I have yet to plumb. But the Republican political response to the BP oil disaster is getting just plain weirder and weirder as time goes on. We already went through the criticizing BP is un-American comment from Senate candidate Rand Paul. We went through the this shows we need less oil industry regulation comment from Republican Senate candidate Sharon Engel. We went through the apologize to BP outburst from the top Republican on the House Energy Committee, Joe Barton. We went through the BP paying oil spill victims is a shakedown and a slush fund. We went through that accusation from not just Joe Barton, but from a whole chorus of Republicans. But even after all of that, things now are getting even weirder. Listen to what Republican Congressman Paul Brown of Georgia had to say about the BP oil disaster at a town hall event on Thursday.
What we've already seen from our president is he is utilizing this crisis of this oil spill to try to promote his energy tax. And I've had numerous people all over the district question whether his poor response to this oil spill was purposeful so that he could promote his energy tax. Now, I don't know.
Yeah, President Obama and BP conspired to blow up the Deepwater Horizon oil rig and let the oil keep spewing into the Gulf of Mexico for months so they could advance their shared evil plan to tax carbon. Congressman Brown's theory, of course, comes on the heels of this bit of extravagantly kooky paranoia from Republican congressional candidate Bill Randall from North Carolina.
This is purely speculative and not based on any fact. But personally, I feel there's a possibility that there was some sort of collusion. I don't know how or why, but in that situation, if you have someone from a company proposing to violate the safety process and then the government signing off on it, excuse me, maybe they wanted it to leak.
Maybe they wanted it to leak. So the Republican political response to the BP oil disaster now includes a variety of apologies to BP and accusations that the whole disaster was planned on purpose by BP and the evil government and the Freemasons in black helicopters with the fluoride or something. And right now, somewhere in Washington, Senate Democrats have the task of trying to put together an energy bill that will win some Republican votes in this context. Good luck with that. Joining us now is Jonathan Alter, Newsweek columnist, MSNBC political analyst, and author of the best-selling book, The Promise, President Obama, Year One. John, thanks very much for being here.
Hi, Rachel.
So it's obviously good news if that cap is going to work, but
Yes.
This crisis is going to continue to go on, even if they've got that under control, even if we're just talking about the cleanup. Why isn't it true that this disaster in the Gulf has created a political opportunity for energy reform? Why hasn't that happened?
It's a great question, because it should have been the kind of 9/11 of domestic policy, although energy is also a foreign policy issue. And there were some real hopes that it would have a transformative effect. It hasn't happened that way because our politics are so polarized that whereas after 9/11 you could get this kind of bipartisan action to transform American foreign policy, transforming energy policy is still largely a partisan issue, although there are some Senate bills sponsored by Republicans like Richard Lugar that have more things like nuclear energy in them that are part of what is being cobbled together now in the Senate. But it's important to understand that this bill that they're going to come up with and try to get through in they basically just have a month, less than a month before the August recess, it is not going to be a cap and trade bill. It is not going to have a price on carbon. That will not happen before the election. There are too many Democrats who are afraid of that for their own political reasons at home. So if that happens, it's going to take place in the lame duck session when Democrats won't have to worry about being depicted as job killers.
But again, this does seem like there's one of those cases where Washington and public opinion are very far apart, and that always represents a political opportunity, it seems to me. Right. Because even if Republicans aren't willing to say, oh, geez, we got a problem with the oil companies, the whole country is looking at what's going on in the Gulf and saying, oh, geez, we got a problem with the oil companies. So their response has been so, I think, out of keeping with with public opinion broadly. But it's also been crazy. I mean, Sarah Palin denying that drill baby drill actually meant drilling, the apologizing to BP, the conspiracy theories. You would expect the Republican missteps on this, large and small, to have some electoral impact.
Yeah, well, I think it might if the Democrats can capitalize on it. Yeah. And if they can't, like, you know, they don't know how to, they should find another line of work. If Democrats can't capitalize with where the BP Republicans have been. So the president started to try to do that, but, you know, making Joe Barton a household name requires attention, and he has to work at it over time to make Boehner and Barton household names so that people understand if they vote Republican for the House of Representatives and John Boehner becomes Speaker and Joe Barton becomes chairman of the House Energy Committee, they will have a House of Representatives and basically a Congress that is not partly in the pocket of the oil industry, but fully in the pocket of the oil industry and willing to apologize for BP. Do the American people want that? No. But, so, you know, who's going to tell the people that those are the stakes? And so that's the political challenge for Democrats, that's setting aside the energy bill, the sheer politics of it. The challenge is to make Joe Barton a household name so that people understand the consequences of them voting Republican in November.
One last piece of this that I find fascinating is the emergence of these conspiracy theories. And I know we're a conspiratorial people. That's part of what it is to be an American, and it goes back a very long time. But it seems like right now, this is sort of just what happens now in American politics. As soon as an issue goes on for long enough, it becomes subject to like stuff that makes the Freemason conspiracies look like, you know, fables. It's kind of, is this inevitable now?
Well, I think it's partly a sign of frustration on the part of the Republicans because they thought that this oil spill and Obama's slow reaction to it was going to be political gravy for them, and they're starting to sense that it might turn against them. The politics of it are not working for them. Yeah. So they then, you know, lash out and come up with crazy conspiracy theories. But it's also just more indications of how this particular political party has been compromised by whack jobs and wingnuts and Looney Tunes. They've always had this in the Republican Party. Remember the John Birch Society? Yeah. You know, in the 50s, 60s.
And 2000s, they're back.
The difference was that it used to be that you would hear from them, like in newsrooms, we'd get letters from them on the red typewriter ribbon, all caps. Well, now they have their own television network, right? So they have more, the crazies have more sway than they used to, and they do have a lot of power within the Republican Party. And when you talk to serious, responsible Republicans, and they do exist, contrary to what some liberals think, you know, they're really upset about this, that their party is in danger of being taken over by lunatics.
Compromised by whack jobs. I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker and wait for the appropriate car to come along. It's Jonathan Alter, Newsweek columnist, MSNBC political analyst, and author of a book that is selling like hotcakes right now. Congratulations on the promise. Thanks.
Thanks a lot,
Good
Rachel.
To see you, John.
Good to see you.